The school board meeting of August 27th. I'm trying to move this right along. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Ms. Dahm.
Thank you. President Dr. Jerry Dannenberg.
Here.
Vice President Calvin Peterson.
Here.
Trustee James Forsyth.
Here.
Trustee Alicia Levere.
Here.
Trustee Sabrina Rodriguez.
Here.
And Superintendent Dr. Antonio Castro.
Here.
Thank you.
I'm happy to report we took no action in closed session this evening, so we'll move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Castro.
Thank you, Dr. Dannenberg. In the good news section, we'll keep it brief. Just a couple things. When we met for our Celebrate event, we had shared with everyone present just a lot of pride as it related to our multilingual learners, that 43% of our 8th grade students who had never taken an AP class passed an AP exam, and that's a testament to the biliterate education that they've received over the years. Our staff, the students, their families, some great news. And then the other piece, I have clearance from Dr. Mirza to tentatively state that one of the board's priorities, of course, is addressing declining enrollment. We know that we, along with many of the districts in the state, are experiencing declining enrollment. The projections that we had for the number of students that we thought we would lose is not as bad as we had anticipated and as it's been. So that's very tentative. We have still a positive attendance, okay, to work through, but that initial number of students enrolled is much higher than we had expected. So we'll continue to monitor that, and that's all I have. Thank you, Dr. Dannenberg.
Do we have any correspondence tonight?
No.
Seeing none. Public comments. Ms. Dahm.
Hi, thank you. I think Ms. Wallowitz was going to read the civility statement. Okay.
Good evening. For your public comments tonight, you will have 3 minutes to speak. You will be given a 30-second warning, and the timer will indicate when the time is up. Before we begin, we would like to remind everyone that the governing board recognizes the impact that civility has in the effective operation of the district, including its role in creating a safe and positive school climate and enabling a focus on student well-being, learning, and achievement. The board believes that each person should be treated with dignity and respect in their interactions within the school community. The board understands that the First Amendment provides strong protection for speech. However, the board expects that all speech, expression, and action will follow the norms of civil behavior on district grounds, in district facilities, during district activities, meetings, and events, and in the use of district electronic digital systems and platforms. Please remember that this meeting is streaming live, and we do have students that attend and watch our meetings, so please keep language as respectful as possible. Please also note that the microphone at the podium has been calibrated, and there is no need to touch the microphone, just simply speak right into it. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So first up tonight is Danielle Brown, and you will be followed by Steve Chalkins.
Mike's over here on this side.
Good evening. I'm here to say that I really think Washington School needs to be saved. It's a cornerstone of our neighborhood. The school and our neighborhood were all built in 1925. It's an architectural gem. It has interior hardwood floors, a central courtyard with trees and planters. It has a kindergarten room with a fireplace. The auditorium has tiered seating. It's a beautiful building, and it's withstood earthquakes for 100 years. The schools that they have been building ever since probably 1930 look like an architect from the Soviet Union built them. They're just square blocks of cement. This is a beautiful building, and I think it could be utilized for many purposes, My idea would be a senior center. We only have one, and it's way up on the avenue. And for boomers like me, it's hard to get there. And the playground could be used as a park. The only park we have near us is a cemetery. So, I mean, it's green, it's grass, but that's not, you know, any place for anybody to want to play. So I ask that you consider that, and please don't sell it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Steve Chalkins, followed by Doug Kidwell.
Hi, I'm Steve Chalkins. I want to thank you all for affording the neighborhood this opportunity to express our feelings. Obviously, we have a great many people who feel very strongly about the Washington School. I don't know to what extent you all have explored the school, but I've lived in the neighborhood for 36 years. I live around the corner from the school. And even in its empty days, even when it was standing there as essentially a shell of what used to be a vibrant place, it was gorgeous. It's a gracious building. It's not a building that you really come across in Southern California very much. It added a sense of charm and quiet to the neighborhood. But I've never seen the neighborhood be as vibrant as when you leased the school to the Ventura County Christian School. There were, I don't know, dozens, maybe 100, maybe 200 children who were studying there. And yes, the narrow street in front got jammed with traffic. The street is about 10 feet wide, and when people picked up their kids, it was a little bit of a madhouse, but it was great for the neighborhood. And since the Christian school had to leave, once again, this neighborhood has kind of like withdrawn a little bit. I think if one of your core values is reviving neighborhoods in Ventura, maybe there's some way you can see it clear, see your way clear to perhaps selling the vacant part of the property, sell the athletic fields, which are huge, but let's keep the school building as a testament to history and as a testament to our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Doug Kidwell, followed by Marcy Helmuth.
Nice. Dr. Castro, good evening. Board of Education and everyone, good evening. I come before you tonight to share my concern and support about the future of Washington School. In 1926, renowned architect Harold E. Burkitt designed and built the Washington School, 96 McMillan Street. 98 years ago, soon to be 99, almost a century old. This summer, on August 2nd, the school building of Washington School was nominated to the California State Historical Resources Commission in Sacramento for historical status, and to be protected with the idea it could be repurposed in the future to serve a new purpose in Ventura. At that meeting in Sacramento, Dr. Castro and his representatives shared that the district does not support the building receiving historical status and preservation. We are here tonight to share concern and support that you are hearing loud and clearly about the future of Washington School. We respectfully request that the district strongly consider putting Washington School on a future agenda item for discussion and public input. You're going to hear many people speak tonight, all in favor of preserving Washington School. Ladies and gentlemen, Washington School Washington School is
worthy to be preserved.
Washington School is
Worthy to be preserved.
A familiar concept of VUSD is longevity. Every year, VUSD celebrates its employees' longevity. The word itself means a long time, great duration, endurance, and dedication. Washington School has almost 100 years of longevity at Ventura. We would love to see it protected. We would love to see it repurposed in the future. And thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. Next up, we have Marcy, followed by Tricia.
Good evening. My name's Marcy Helmuth, and I live on South Pacific Avenue, so next to Hearst, so the school's very close to me. And actually, I used to live in the McMillan House, which is adjacent to Washington School. And I remember when the school closed and things were sold and all of that. And then eventually, the Ventura County Christian School went in there, and I think that was a really good thing. But I would like to see the school placed on the list of historical places. I definitely would not want to see the school demolished or torn down and a big box complex go there. Our neighborhood is unique, and we that live in the neighborhood want to see our neighborhood preserved. And so recently I was in Hayward, California, visiting family, and as I was walking, there was an elementary school there that had closed because it was excess property, and it's going to become a community center. And so my hope is that whatever happens at the school, that it's repurposed for something positive like that, because we could use that in Ventura. So we definitely want to keep the character of our neighborhood the same and repurpose the school for something that we in the neighborhood can use, and that will be there for future people to be able to enjoy and thrive. If it was a community center, a lot of people would be able to use it. So I just want to say I would like to see the school remain and stand, and it be repurposed for something that's meaningful and useful for our neighborhood and the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Tricia, followed by Bert Handy. Tricia is all I have. First name, yeah.
Hello, everybody. I'm one of the last people to be standing up here. I'm very shy, but this is important. I live on the edge of the school. I'm near the playground. So for 7 years, I had the privilege of all the little children playing and squealing and laughing and having fun. And now all I'm getting is crickets. I mean, it's crickets every night. And I find myself confused as to why is it that the Christian school got pulled out in July and it's been sitting empty for 13 months. I'm scratching my head on that. Because I'm so close to the property there, I can see that the grass, the area is just very dry. Both McMillan and Hearst sides, so dry that it's actually on the concerning side. I can see every time that mowing is happening, it seems like you guys are keeping up with the mowing really well, but it's really dry. And then there's unsafe conditions resulting from the untreated gopher activity. There's a lot of safety for dog walkers, neighborhood kids, anybody who thought they might want to stroll near the fence or sit under the trees. My understanding is that the VUSD works for the public, so I've had that emphasized to me a number of times. I'd like to see the playground become a park. I'm on the Hearst Avenue side. Hearst Avenue is very thin. It's like one lane. You can't park. You can only park on one side, and it's one lane on the way down. And so I don't know what they think they could what you think you could possibly put in there as maybe a 500-unit structure with both McMillan and Hearst Ave. They're both very small streets. A playground area, maybe a park, community center, and that's in the back where the playground is. So to put Washington School on the VUSD agenda as a public item, and the neighborhood cares deeply about preserving Washington School. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Bert, and he's followed by Lisa Darby.
Good evening, Board. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak here. Washington School is a gem in the community. I have lived in that area for over 40 years, and during that time, there's been a lot of changes. You've seen the businesses go and come, but Washington School is unique in its way. It's actually served the community in many, many ways. Over the last 100 years, it has accomplished a lot of things for your district here, training students and educating students, and the Christian school was there also at that same time, and it can be repurposed to a very important area for a community center for the people who live there now. I believe it is very important in the historical context of the city of Ventura to keep a structure like this in the area, because there are really no parks close to that area, and it really is inconvenient for the people to have to cross major streets to get to any facility that's a park for the kids that actually live in the area right now. So it's something worth saving. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Lisa next, followed by Ashley Stutzman.
It's so good to hear people trying to bless you guys with the ideas of Washington School. My name's Lisa Darby. I was a founding board member for Ventura County Christian School. I was a teacher, a fundraiser, and a chairman of the board for a little while, and then the administrator of the school for 3 years. I was in charge of all the overseeing of the Washington School renovation. I have poured my life out for that building, and it's a blessing. And thank you. And the importance of believing that things are impossible is just such a character building thing in our community, and I just really do plead that you hang on to this school. There's so many hundreds of people that will tell you their lives were changed by the experience of that building. I'm going to try to speed through this. Okay, I told you my name. Okay. I was hired, I came on the board and I volunteered to make a poster for our school that we didn't have a building or students for. We had a 2-year opportunity to open a school in a church, and then we had to find somewhere. We were going to be nomads. I dropped my daughters off at Billy Clower Dance Studio twice a week, and I took a picture of the Washington School. I didn't know what it was. I just thought, what a great building. And that poster went out to all these churches. At that point, I started going, when I drop the girls off, I'm going to ask God to give us this building. And so I drop them off and I go, dear Lord, please give us the building, amen. And then I go, oh, what a lame prayer. How would that ever, what the heck? And so, but I still did it. I did it and did it. And then that led me to bring the board over and look at the building. And they said, we looked through the chain link that went all the way around it. And they're all, let's try to get it. Let's try to get that. And so a board member and myself met with Superintendent Joe Spirito, and he just about laughed us out of his office. He's all, we never do this. We don't lease to non-public school entities, and so we left. And then I thought I'd try the historic committee at City Hall, and I went up there and we had this nice meeting there. Oh, this is so great. We'd love to see this stay a school, but we can't really help you get in there. Well, the city planner followed me out. I thanked him, and I was leaving, and he was on my heels, and I kind of turned around, and he goes, who do you Christians think you are? That'll never be your school. It's going to be low-income housing. We have first right to have it. You'll never get it. And when I get nervous, like I am now, I usually laugh. And I sort of chuckled, and I said, well, we believe in miracles. Uh-oh. And so eventually, after saying that, years passed, we were nomadic, and this is the best. I'll go right from my third page. About a year later, our board came to me and said, we were invited to a meeting about the Washington School, and I said no. But we went, and we got there, and we thought we were at the wrong meeting because the people there were just Spirito and Joe Richards and Jorge Gutierrez and the mayor, Jack Tingstrom, and a developer who just passed away named Ernie Mancy. Should I keep going, or can I keep going?
I'm sorry.
Sorry, your time is up.
Okay. We apologize, thinking that we are at the wrong place because there were no people there about Washington School or anything. And so we said, oh, we're sorry, we
Ma'am, I'm
thought there was a
sorry, your time is
meeting
up.
about.
I'm next. I don't need my whole
Thank you. And they
I'm
said,
sorry, you can't give your time away.
thank you.
You can't give your time away, so you're finished, thank you.
Okay, and so I said, we thought this was about Washington School, and they said, wait, it's not about Washington School, it's about Ventura County Christian School. What would you do if we gave you Washington School? So,
Ma'am, I'm so sorry. We can't donate our time to someone else, so we do need the next speaker to come up.
finish up really quick.
You can leave your written comments for us, and we will give them to us.
Do I have a copy here?
One parent then donated $80,000 for modulars to be brought since we
This is
thought the building
Ashley.
was unfixable. The city never let us get in them, and a year later, we only had our field by the auditorium. A structural engineer recommended by Main Street architect Nick Deach agreed to assess the property. We did a soil study to determine if the building was safe. Jim Vinci was the engineer from Westlake, and he spent several hours in and under Washington School. Appearing dusty and amazed, he came out marveling enthusiastically at the bones of this architecture, wonderfully built on whole beam timbers, supporting the entire front wing, and his report validated a sound structure that was totally safe to inhabit. Hundreds of parents, neighbors, church members came from all over to help with sanding, painting, varnishing floors, plumbing, and replacing windows, laying tile, and even replacing the entire roof, valued at $800,000. A couple city council members also came to thank us and show their strong support. The city said Washington School could never be renovated, but in the end, they awarded us with a plaque acknowledging the restorative work done on an impossible building. The heart and soul put into this building was still and is still amazing. Ventura County Christian School had every hope to permanently remain at Washington School. After raising over $300 million in goods, services, and labor, the lease was not renewed, and the school was forced to leave the Washington School where our community had worked so hard. I got word of this lease problem too late, but I did speak to Dr. Castro last year. He asked me, what would you want me to do? My answer was, and still is, for the amount of work we did, I would ask you to renew their lease with the same terms and be open to allowing VCCS to strive to purchase it. The Washington School is a timeless, beautiful architectural gem whose history resounds with the laughter of children, the love of learning, and a legacy of safety and joy. Schools have always been a selling point for cities. This school offers that in every way. Currently, cities strong arm their districts to give up properties without much thought of the positive impact a school like Washington brings to its community. VUSD, please do not abandon this school and the relationship with VCCS. VCCS has competed with many others to ultimately have the honor of restoring the building, and if it were my choice today, I'd still say, even plead, that you consider renewing their original lease for many more years, but at least another 20. The school has definitely more than earned that chance. In the end, it's not about money, it's about choice, character, and appreciation for what is truly good for the people. Hang on to this treasure. Mr. Castro, we heard what you said against Washington School in Sacramento, but with all due respect, you do not live here. Good evening, my name is Ashley Stutzman. My family has lived in Ventura since 1958. My mom and my aunt both attended Washington School. I was born and raised around the corner on Santa Ynez Street, and including my older two children, we are 3 generations of VUSD graduates. I never got the chance to attend Washington School, but throughout my childhood, I did get to see the pile of disrepair that Ventura Unified let it turn into after they closed its doors. I also watched as it stood proud and tall through every earthquake we've had since. When VCCS came, they filled our neighborhood with life as they made Washington School beautiful again and filled it with eager to learn children. The traffic may have been congested during school drop-off and pickup, but I can't even imagine the traffic if what we hear is planned comes to fruition. This school was not an empty, abandoned building until the district chose to make it one in June of 2023. My parents still live in the house I grew up in, and speaking with our neighbors, I have not found one that is interested in losing this property.
Next up, we have Brenda Coleman. So Brenda's next, followed by Natalie Oman.
Good evening. I'm Brenda Coleman, here with my husband Michael. I wanted to start with something positive. Our 2 daughters went to Pierpont Elementary, Cabrillo Middle School, and Ventura High School, and had a wonderful positive experience at each of the sites. And also, soon our grandchildren will be attending Ventura schools. The current situation with Washington School has created confusion and disappointment. I think that if residents had more information or had been included in conversation, we might not be here tonight. Residents do not understand why Ventura Unified contested the Conservancy's Washington School Historic Preservation nomination, or why Ventura Unified submitted their report on the last possible day. These actions contributed to the delay in a second hearing now scheduled for November 7th. Additionally, residents do not recall a Ventura Unified vote on Washington School. Washington School is beloved both in the neighborhood and throughout the community. The buildings and surrounding grounds have tremendous potential for reuse that could greatly benefit the public. I still use yellow notepads. Residents have strongly supported the San Buenaventura Conservancy and are thankful for Stephen Schaefer and his good work. I'd like to encourage people to go to the Conservancy website for instructions on how to send a letter of support to Sacramento and on how to donate to the Washington School Project. Both of these asks are critical. I ask board members, and I say this respectfully, to be mindful that those of us that are present tonight have put you in your seats. We voted for you. You were elected to represent us, to serve us. We are your constituents. We also voted in favor of the historic Measure E bond back in November 2022. We are people that support education. I'm an individual that has both hope and faith.
30 seconds.
I believe that we can work together. Please be open to the community voice. Please include us in your discussions and let us be a part of your important decisions. In closing, at the Washington School front door, there is a plaque embedded in the pavement. It reads, "This building dedicated to truth, liberty, toleration, by the Native Sons of the Golden West, February 14th, 1926, 2 years shy of 100 years. Let us all practice this wisdom." Thank you.
Next up, we have Natalie Oman, and she'll be followed by Megan Swanson.
My name is Natalie, and I'm a local resident, a mother of 2 daughters aged 11 and 9, and I am also a local realtor. 3 things that I would like to share about tonight are my interest in preserving the Washington School building, the preservation of green space in Midtown, and lastly, my disapproval of proposed VUSD building teacher-subsidized housing. Washington School has been in the fabric of our community for 100 years. It is a recognizable and beloved building that has captured the hearts of all in Midtown Ventura. The historic building community has recognized the significance that this building contains and has moved to have it nominated to the Historic Register. As board members, why delay or oppose this process? Are you all versed in historic architecture and are serving on this board because you have such qualifications? Please preserve our community history, preserve the memories, and spark inspiration for future generations. You have that power in your hands. Secondly, I passionately propose that we preserve the green space around Washington School. There are numerous scientific studies that demonstrate the benefits of having green space in urban areas. Scientifically proven benefits of green space are stress reduction, improved mood, enhanced cognitive function, stronger immune system, better sleep, promoting physical activity. And they're not only beneficial for humans, but also vital for our environment, absorbing carbon dioxide, playing a crucial role in biodiversity conservation, and lowering elevated city air temperatures. In 2008, a Lancet study by Dr. Richard Mitchell and Frank Popham of 40 million British people found a link between income inequality, access to green spaces, and life expectancy. People on the lowest incomes living in cities without much access to green space are expected to live 10 years less than those on the highest incomes with access to green space. If you choose to develop the green space around Washington School, you will likely contribute to lowering not only quality of life, but also possibly lower life expectancy in the surrounding community. Lastly, on the subject of VUSD possibly creating teacher housing, we did not elect you school board members to be landlords. We elected you to help facilitate the learning of the children of Ventura. As a realtor and housing provider, I know what it takes to maintain a property. VUSD, with little or no experience in renting and overseeing properties, you'll have to hire for-profit developers, in turn using our tax dollars for teacher housing that the citizens of Ventura don't want anyway. As a realtor, many of our Ventura school buildings need updates and ongoing maintenance that VUSD is and has been trying to gain extra funding for.
Thank you. Your
How
time
are
is
we
up.
going to maintain teacher housing? Do teachers want the quality of their housing to be subpar?
Thank you. Your time
Now
is
I've
up.
had the privilege of listening to these meetings, attending these meetings, and emailing you and knowing you all personally. And I appreciate your work as an
Next, we have Megan Swanson, followed by Dan Dittmer.
Hello, my name is Megan Swanson. When I moved to Ventura over a decade ago, it was because of the beautiful ocean views, open farmlands, rolling hills, and rich historical buildings. I moved into a striking little Victorian home built in 1888. People would stop me on the street when they found out that I lived there and tell me how happy they were that I preserved this historical home. It's what makes Ventura so special, they'd say. Since then, my community has vastly expanded, and the one thing we all have in common is an appreciation for open land and historical landmarks. Never have I met someone in Ventura, as a Ventura local, who supports the building up of Ventura. Ventura has less than 100 landmarked buildings, which is considerably low compared to the other cities with rich history. I believe that city planning has done a poor job at preserving the history and integrity of this beautiful city. A huge part of what was so desirable about Ventura has quickly been slipping away in the last 5 years. While the overdevelopment is hugely concerning and disheartening, it's a tragedy that we'd be willing to tear down some of Ventura's most beautifully historical buildings in an effort to do so. I have heard potential rumors that the school board proposes to build over 200 teacher housing units in that space. And I'm curious, if you guys have been down to this particular property, you know that the city blocks, or the streets rather, are so incredibly small. We do not have the infrastructure to support anything remotely close to this proposal. You can only fit one car at a time between two parked cars, which would make it literally impossible to add 200 to 400 more cars during the rush hour. The lot has been built for a school. In fact, there was a super sweet school located there for 20 years. When they got notice to vacate due to the building's safety concerns, the school authorities quickly got a second and third opinion from well-respected building inspectors who strongly disagreed with this assessment, which was really disheartening. And while it might not any longer be allowed to be a school, it should at least be reserved for this community that supports it. Leaving it as an open space serves every single person in the community. As a community member who very much is against the building up of Ventura, I agree that a city needs improvement and growth, but it can be done tastefully while adding to the history that makes the city so great in the first place. The Washington School Building is simply not the space to implement this growth. It would be only to the detriment of our city if we develop this beautiful grass area and knock down this historical building. As a community member who lives only a few blocks away, I can tell you that the lack of open spaces in Ventura is quickly making me forget why I fell in love with the city to begin with. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is going to be Dan, followed by James Marcus.
My name is Dan Detmer. I'm speaking here in support of preserving the Washington School. I wrote a letter to the State Commission and staff expressing that support and noting that the older neighborhoods of Ventura have several other old stately buildings such as this, some of which have been recently renovated and celebrated. Buildings like this are highly valued by both residents and tourists alike. The Washington School is in good repair and represents a fine example of Mediterranean architecture. The property is surrounded by numerous older homes of similar architectural style. I'd like to reiterate what a number of speakers have said. We should preserve this facility. It's a lovely building. It's got an auditorium. You know, they don't make stuff like this anymore. You know, so I respectfully request that the board, staff, and consultants consider the Washington School as a local resource and not just a district asset for a potential sale. Please explore redevelopment options for the building. We've heard some good ideas tonight about community centers and public use of the space before you decide what to do. I want you to be aware, and maybe you are, there's companies such as the McManamans Company that operates in Washington and Oregon, who has restored and redeveloped more than 40 school sites and other historic properties. And they're viable, you know, they're very popular facilities. Some are hotels, some are restaurants in school sites. They're multi-use facilities. And so there's people that do this, and even if the school board doesn't have this expertise, they can get some help. So another recent example of such a renovation is the Hotel San Buena in downtown Ventura. Was recently opened after a major redevelopment effort. It's another large 1928 Spanish Revival building that's less than a mile away. So clearly there's support for these kind of projects, and they can be economically viable. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is James, and he'll be followed by Jackson Toro.
Hi, everyone. I'm James Marcus. I have a 12-year-old daughter who goes to Cabrillo Middle School. I'm a local owner of a cafe, and I'm a proud member of this community. I think it's amazing to see everybody here and doing what they're doing. And yeah, I think I have great respect for this board. You guys have done an amazing job over the years. I have some ideas that I think we can improve on just for the quality of the children. And I'm running for school board for Area 2, and I just want to introduce myself. And yeah, I'm just excited to be here, and I have great respect for everybody, and obviously all of you guys. So yeah, I hope you guys, yeah, just know I'm here. I'm a very passionate listener, and I genuinely care about this community, and I'm here for you on both sides. So thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Jackson, followed by Stephen Schaefer.
Thank you very much for allowing me to speak this evening. These are all of my neighbors. I don't know everybody here, but we all feel the same. I pretty much guess on that one. The only thing I'd like to say from my heart is that I've lived across the street from the Washington Grade School now for 50 years. I've seen it all. I've seen it. I've seen it when it was a well, in the early days back in the 70s, everything was, it was a great school. And then later on, it fell apart. It really turned into pretty much a flop house. It was awful. But then the Christian school came in, and even though I lived right across the street, and there was always traffic jams and stuff, I never minded, not one day, because it was so great to see the kids come in there. They lined up. Everybody behaved so nicely. The teachers were great. Just loved the school. So it was really a sad thing to see them, have to leave. I would like to see them come back if there's any chance of that at all, because I think they had good educators just like you folks are. And at the end of the day, one morning I got up on a Saturday morning. It was pretty early. I heard a lot of noise outside, and it was over at the school. And my wife and I try to watch that school as closely as we can in case there's any problems or any trouble over there. And we just saw these big, giant dumpsters coming in there. And they were just pitching chairs and cabinets and tables and desks just to go down to the dump or to the recycler. And I'll tell you, it just hurt. It really cut deep, because I kept thinking of all of these little kids that were behind those desks and what they learned there and how valuable it's going to be. And here it was. Everything was just being thrown away like it was worth nothing. And there's so many people in this community, boy, they'd love to have an extra desk or a chair, anything that they could use. But there was nothing about that. It was just thrown away. There was no giving away or talk, not even to sell the, hey, this is free. Come on in and get it. So I'm 100% for keeping the building. I echo everything that everybody else said. already. I'd like to keep it that way for as long as we can. It's a great building. We love it. It fits the complexion of the whole neighborhood, and that's about all I got to say.
Thank you. Up next is Stephen Schaefer, followed by Christy Weir.
I'm a photographer, so I'd like to take a picture of all your signs. You can start the clock. This is pretty great. This doesn't happen very often in sort of a grassroots movement. So my name is Stephen Schaefer. I am president of the San Buenaventura Conservancy for Preservation. I am so impressed with you guys. Gonna choke up here. Anyway, so I'm going to read to you a little bit about the school district's comments. This is off the Ventura Unified School District comment to the State Historic Resources Commission. I don't know if you've seen this. It's on district letterhead. Dear Commission, Ventura Unified School District is the current owner of the Washington Elementary School site located at 96 McMillan, et cetera, et cetera. Thus, the district submits the following comment regarding the nomination of Washington property. It's a long thing, so let me skip to this paragraph. The district remains committed to collaborating with the community regarding Washington property when assessing its potential future uses, but it doesn't feel that way. But does not believe the Washington property, due to substantial alterations and lack of physical integrity, should be deemed an important historic resource. That's you, the district. The district will work with the local community when determining its future use. The district believes it would be a disservice to the historical designation process and to the Ventura community if the Washington property was listed as a historical site. The district submits this comment as a supporter of historical designations generally. I would say instead of paying for lawyers and consultants tens of thousands of dollars to fight the National Register listing of Washington School, that money could have been used to list Avenue School, Montalvo School, Will Rogers School, Satacoy School, Ventura High School's auditorium, Buena High School's auditorium on the National Register. So we'd really like a public discussion so that we can, just sort of have some transparency. Please put Washington School and Avenue School on a future VUSD agenda. And let's have a transparent discussion in public about the Historic Register. I think staff's a little out in front of the board on this. I don't know that you guys have ever actually voted on it. I haven't seen it. We haven't been able to speak to it. It doesn't feel transparent to us. And thank you very much.
Next up, we have Christy, and she'll be followed by Cherie Eckberg. They're both speaking on multiple items. So for this first one, Christy's going to have 2.5 minutes.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm on the board of the Conservancy for Historic Preservation, and I support the landmark designation for this property. The essence of a neighborhood is based on historic buildings and properties. They contribute to the character of our city and are worth preserving. Washington School and the surrounding property are a beautiful and defining heart of Midtown. Please bring this decision about historic landmark designation and the use of the building in the future back to the board after providing lots of opportunity for public input. Smart cities and smart school districts focus on adaptive reuse of historic properties, never demolition. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Cherie, followed by Spencer Noren. And for this, Cherie's got multiple items, so she wants 2 minutes on this first one.
Good evening, school board and superintendent. My name is Cherie Eckberg. I'm here to, I just wanted to talk about, I'm on the 7-Eleven committee, and in the October 2020 minutes, we have this committee. If you don't know what it is a committee that informs what the best use of surplus property would be. And so they are actually reconvening and meeting again this Thursday at the school district office at 3 o'clock if anyone is interested in coming and making public comment. So what we said back then was considering that the property has been declared surplus property previously, the advisory committee agreed that they all hoped the building would maintain its historical integrity. That's in the minutes. The advisory committee left the decision to the Board of Education to determine what is best interest of the district in regards to this property. So my ask would be, would you be willing to put this on the put Washington School Board on the school board agenda as was recommended by the 7-11 committee previously? And then the other thing I just have to say, yes, this was quite a surprise, and I think it's so important to continue to build trusting relationships and community partnerships with the city, with the community members, with the school district. So it would be nice moving forward if we could establish connections and community and work together to find a viable solution. I will also advocate for a park on this land because for children, for health, we want to think about the connection of home to school to community. School is not a silo. And so what happens at home, what happens out in the community, affects life at school. So I do think it's relevant to get our kids outdoors, do anything we can to reduce the social media addiction that's going on, and create opportunities to build a strong, healthy, vibrant community.
Thank you. And lastly, we have Spencer Noren, who will be talking on multiple items, but for this one, he would like 3 minutes.
Thank you, Amy. Dr. Castro, board president, board, staff, pleasure seeing everybody. I want to start off by saying thank you to the residents that came out today. This is one of the best group of residents I've ever seen in a public meeting in a lot of years. Thank you for being here. And thank you for organizing teacher, Mr. Doug Kidwell. Thank you, sir. Amazing job that you've brought out as an active teacher to speak on these things is very powerful. Thank you. And also to Stephen Schaefer for his continued work on the historic building. Amazing. And the young lady that was talking about her work for the school. It looks amazing. 20 years of what the school did to bring the vitality of what this district's about. I am a product of this district. I currently have kids at Ventura High School and Balboa Middle School. I've served as the Juana Maria Gardner, the Parent Action Committee, where I served with Board Member Peterson. Just a few of the titles I held were Cabrillo PTO President, Cabrillo Basketball Coach, Parks and Rec Commissioner for the City of Ventura. And that's the most important thing I want to get across is seeing here is most of our residents in this community don't know the difference between county, city, school district. They see it all the same. They see it as Ventura, San Buenaventura, and the greatest place to live in the world. And that's what we've had in the past that we all fell in love with that we want to share to the future. And the relationship between the school district and the city is the most vital and the most important to me personally because the kids are the most involved there. And people say sometimes at city council meetings, which is actually happening right now on a side note, I think in the future hopefully we can change board meetings and city council. It would help some of us advocates. But right now at city council sometimes they say, hey, we don't do it at the school district, right? That's not in our purview of our budget. Sometimes you come to school district and they say, hey, that's with city stuff. People don't know that, but we have school resource officers that we fund through that. We have after-school programs that we resource. And more importantly, we have open campuses and open space that we relied on for generations that are now shut off by fences and locks. And that's part of what we need. I love the comment about open space having life expectancy because let's open the gates tomorrow, right, at Washington School property. What's stopping us from holding some of this liability on the Washington School property and other properties across our campus to opening up those gates, to giving us a chance to thrive as a community? And that's what I'm here to support. Washington School is historic. I love the building aspects. We have ways of being historic and non-historic, no matter what happens in Sacramento.
30 seconds.
But we can keep the space. It's about the open space. We haven't mentioned the general plan action, which comes every 25 years. We need park designations from the city of Ventura. Board Member Rodriguez is a member of that GPAC. I'm looking for park designations, please. This is an opportunity for that to expand also the memory of Keith Jamal Wilkes, Hall of Fame basketball player from the Los Angeles Lakers that grew up playing on this court. Stephen once said if Babe Ruth played there, it would be historic. I think Mr. Wilkes is the same. Thank you so much.
That was our last public speaker for general public comments.
Thank you. We'll move on to our first agenda item that we've moved up, 15B1. Dr. Castro.
Thank you, Dr. Dannenberg. Mr. Mirza, do you have your staff ready for the presentation?
Yes, Ryan, our bond manager, along with NG staff are here.
And while Ryan's coming up, Rose, are you bringing up the PowerPoints? Okay. Okay, now that the PowerPoint's up.
Okay.
Sorry, Ryan, just real quickly.
Yep.
For anyone that's staying, we've had multiple iterations, discussions with the board. After the last board meeting, you directed staff to do two things. One, engage the Ventura High School staff, and then also to look at the engagement of the surrounding areas as it related to the potential solar array locations. So we're reporting back on the progress. Go ahead, Ryan.
Perfect. Good evening. First, I want to introduce part of Angie's team, Shira, our project manager, and Amelia, the business development manager. We're here to provide the board an update on the steps we took since the last board meeting. In communicating with the Ventura High School's administration, we took advantage of the already scheduled Ventura High School staff meeting and presented to the staff the same presentation, essentially that you're seeing here. Part of the presentation is we asked the staff to provide us, what their recommendations were as part of the design. We received 77 total survey results, and 95% of them chose design number 2, which is putting ground mount units near the CTE buildings where the vacant buildings will be removed. We also, and the remaining 5% chose design number 3, which is way above near the sand volleyball courts. As part of the outreach, we also reached out to the neighboring community that we shared the neighboring wall with near the CTE buildings, and spoke to them about, if we do move forward in this direction, if they had any hesitations or setbacks. And we spoke to 5 of the 6 neighbors, and they were all pretty positive about it. No one had any big concerns. As part of being a good neighbor, we presented them the idea of the feasibility of extending the wall height, just so we can hide the high school in general from the staff, students, and the neighbors. So I'm going to bring up Shira now. She'll kind of go through the slides and go over any estimated costs that they have gotten for the 3 options, and any questions we'll be here to answer. Well, go ahead.
Just real quick.
Yes.
How many students did you ask in the survey? How many did participate?
Students, we didn't survey students.
Okay. And you just did neighbors and parents and staff, correct?
Staff, classified and certificated, and the neighbors that share the same wall with that area.
So no students or parents. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right, Dr. Castro, Board President Dr. Dannenberg, members of the board, thank you again for your time. I'm here to speak with you, as Ryan mentioned again, about the solar at Ventura High School. So just as a reminder, up here on the screen, you see the original layout. This was in the parking lot on the north side of Poli Street. Again, as a result of the unfortunate fault zone, we are not able to build the canopies in that location. This is just a brief reminder of the original design. If we can go to the next slide. So we have 2 primary designs to present here for your consideration. In no particular order, design option number 1 has 3 canopy arrays, 1 in the front of campus, 1 within the courtyard, and 1 within the parking lot just north of the softball fields. All are located outside of the fault zone, so we can build canopy arrays in these areas. You can see a few notes on the side here. We do have some brief pros and cons mentioned. Pros include improved constructability, all shade canopies providing shade for students and staff, all staying on one side of the street, so more simple electrical runs and not having to go underneath the street. There would be an EV charging station located within the parking lot that is required by code. And while we would be removing 5 trees in total, we would be replacing them 1-to-1. That is a guarantee that NG will provide. We have a couple renderings, one on this slide and one on the next slide, of what the front of campus would look like with this solar array. As you can see, it does provide shade and just some brief aesthetics. Design option number 2 contains the same courtyard canopy and parking lot canopy, but a ground mount array on the north side over the area where the buildings would be demolished. The pros here, again, there would be an EV charging station installed within the parking lot, and again, 1-to-1 tree replanting, only 2 trees to be removed as a result of this. And again, shade for students and faculty. It is worth noting that the ground mount array would be fenced off and not accessible to students or staff. The cons for this one are that we would need to do electrical horizontal boring underneath the street. It's absolutely possible, but it does provide an additional layer of complication and a wholly separate electrical boring run. And then there are some shade impacts on the ground mount from the trees to the west outside of the property of the school. Those have been factored into our production analysis, but it's unavoidable as we're not going to be removing the neighbor's trees. As Ryan mentioned, there are results here of the staff survey and neighborhood engagement. As you can see, pretty overwhelmingly staff in favor of design option number 2, which is the ground mount option. And then just once again, some examples of solar canopies and ground mounts that NG has provided so that you can see what the aesthetics look like. Now we'll open up to any questions.
Did you have your estimated costs?
Oh, yes. Would you like me to speak to the estimated costs of the 2? Yeah. So these are rough numbers at the moment, but for design option number 1, the additional cost would be approximately $900,000. And for design option number 2, it would be approximately $1.1 million. And 3. I apologize, we don't have that number. We were primarily
Number 2 again.
1.1 million. If that is of interest, we can follow up with that. I apologize. We primarily were focused on 1 and 2.
Yeah, I think last meeting we were talking about 1 and 2. So,
Yes.
Yeah.
Are there any questions by the board?
So I just feel like I should preface this. Like, I really appreciate all of the work that has been done. And Amelia knows, like, I have championed this project from the very beginning. But I really, I just have a very hard time with any of these options. I think that I feel like the in front of the school is a non-starter for obvious reasons, but even losing the senior lawn just feels like a huge culture shift for the school, and I've had this conversation with Dr. Castro. I mean, I'm to the point where I would probably prefer not to do solar at Ventura High School. That's how strongly I feel about the way that it impacts the school, because I just feel that what we lose with all of these options is really significant to the culture for the students and for the community. We did get something from a community member today asking about below the stadium. Yes. I'm curious if you had a chance to look at that.
Yes.
Yeah, we did. We actually discussed that. It's not a particularly feasible solution, unfortunately. I do want to note that we looked at, I think we were saying, every square inch of this campus, yes. and we really have been trying to be diligent because we do understand the concerns, and we hear you. Nothing about this is ideal. Unfortunately, the area in question is, first of all, on a very steep slope and really could not be built on due to the slope of the ground there. Secondly, when you do a ground mount in that area, which it would have to be because it's in the fault zone, there's a lot of setbacks that are required because we have to fence off around it, and we don't want the fencing to shade the arrays, and there's just mandatory clearances. Once you take into account that 10-foot clearance and all the clearances around the fence, you really can barely fit any solar, if anything.
I just real quick about the senior lawn. What do we use, or what does Ventura use for the senior lawn? I have 2 kids in primary, so I don't.
Greg, why don't you go and weigh in on this one? Yeah.
The senior lawn primarily is used for mostly, honestly, it's just transit that I see students in between classes. There's some students hanging out there, sitting, eating, but that's, I would say, not the majority of its use. Sometimes there's clubs there. When they have club day, they have tables set up there. And when they do like a freshman or back to school orientation, they often set up there because it's near the college and career center, et cetera. But actually during lunch, I'll just say objectively, it's not a central hangout spot.
I'll just add, it is used for dances,
Yes.
and it's one of the only places on the campus that's used for outdoor dancing. And they do, the reason it's called the senior lawn is because they do host the senior barbecue and senior activities there. So they do cornhole and barbecues and all the things that you think of when you think of like picnicking for our students are done there. In addition to like when we've had concerts from, I can't remember his name, Big Bad, no, Kyle something, sorry, I know that's terrible that I can't, thank you, Super Duper Kyle came and he performed there, right? So it is used for special events, even though it's not necessarily, I agree with you, it's not used on a routine basis.
And then it'll be a canopy, so there would be, the grass underneath would be dead, right? Blocked out by from the sun. And there could be like mud and issues, so would there be paved underneath to support more student transit? Or?
Sure, DSA is very specific on the use of underneath the canopies, and if we were to say it's going to be occupied, they're way more stringent. They require literally fire sprinklers, so we're trying to avoid that. There are areas where we can look at and get creative. It's
And what would the floor be?
ultimately it could be hardscape, but we'd have to wait a little bit.
Because the grass would die.
No, not necessarily. I mean, sun will still cast on it as it grows over, but typically grass will grow fine. Concrete hardscape is just a better option, less maintenance. Go ahead.
If I may,
Yeah.
we've installed quite a few of these over grass areas, and what I can speak to from experience of coming out throughout kind of all seasons and seeing that, the grass typically does not die. It obviously can vary from site to site and how the sun will hit the area. Grass typically does grow. Grass is fairly hardy. What we see is just that after rain, it can take a little longer to dry out because it doesn't get necessarily as much direct sunlight. It will dry, but it may take a little longer to dry. But the grass typically does still grow underneath the arrays.
And my last question, I think it would be better to see those areas, right? Like a picture, because we have a lot, like a drop down. I mean, our community members sent us a picture of the actual area in a blocked out way. So that really does take up a lot of the lawn, nearly all of it. So from my point of view, just looking at from here, I'm like, oh, that's not a big deal, but it actually takes up a sizable amount. So I think it would be really helpful to see, you get a better, I don't know, perception of it.
Sure. And understand also, we have 20-foot offsets from all existing buildings. That's why we can't hug up against buildings. So we have to stay within those confinements and code. So it's something we have talked about. We're trying to do the best we can, obviously. It's
it's so unfortunate.
Yeah.
And I'll interject here. Rewind. Oh, no, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
So I think I understand individual points, but I think we talk to the staff.
Yes.
Right? Who are at the school every day.
Yes.
And in my opinion, they're the experts.
Yes.
If they thought that it was going to be a problem, they weren't going to be able to function in the school, I think we would have heard from the staff, and I think this is the reason why we did it, is
Correct.
because we want to get their input.
Yeah, they live it, they breathe it.
Yeah. So I think that we did our due diligence to say the people that are there every day, because we are not. There's no one here that is there every day, and I think that if the staff thought it was going to be a problem for the students or a problem for the school, I think we would have heard it, because it seems like we know solar was important. We voted on it and we said we need this. Where we thought it was going to be, it wasn't going to be there. And then we said, let's get the input. We got the input.
Yeah.
But now the input that we wanted to get, we're going back and say, well, I don't know. I think the school spoke and said, between those options, we believe solar is important. Between these options, this is the option that they picked.
Correct.
And now, what if we do surveys and say, give us your input? They give us the input, and then we go back and say, I don't know if your input is right. I mean, it's kind of setting a bad example. I really think that if the staff says this would be the best place for it, and we know that we should have solar, then I think we should go with what the staff said. But that's just my 20%.
Well, it sets up a false dilemma, right? Pick one or the other. We didn't have the option 3 of saying neither. So, you know, it gives us, it's like a fallacy, right? You just choose one or the other. Which one you prefer? I don't like both items, but I'm going to pick the one I least don't like. So I think there's a false dichotomy, and there's also, we missed an important stakeholder in this whole process, which are the students who use the lawn. Teachers, you know, I'm a teacher. I stay in my classroom all day for the most part. I don't use our lawn space. So as staff, I'm like, cool, let's do it. But we have to get input from those people who use it, and they're our students. They're valuable, right? We can't treat them as, you know, oh, the teachers and staff know better than them about what they do, you know, during their passing periods. And so I think we might have to get that input. I think that's very important.
Well, if we went that route, but I have a question that may really throw you. But if we were not to build at Ventura High, could we overbuild some of our other schools where maybe there's more room? Add more solar panels someplace else?
We asked that same question.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll let the expert talk to it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I
Essentially,
mean,
no.
If only.
Because we can really build Buena up. I mean,
yeah.
Yes.
Unfortunately, just with the SCE interconnection applications as they currently stand, we can't increase the size of any of them without losing the net interconnection metering tariff, which greatly devalues the solar.
I will note, Ventura Unified was tough from the beginning, and this was always it was always concern, and part of it was when we were initially looking at this, Ventura
Can you come up to the mic, because we're
course.
filming this thing.
Ventura High School. You know, it was important to have solar at Ventura High School because how prominent it is in your community and for your students and for your staff. So I just want to know it's been difficult from the beginning. So we understand your concerns, and should we not? It's truly been a question from day one, unfortunately. I know that doesn't help this conversation, but to give you some context.
Okay, how much would we lose if we didn't do the part over the senior lawn? We just did the flat panels above and the one over the, out by the, yeah.
Would it push it to the, oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right. So we can reduce the overall scope. So we need to maintain NEM 2.0 application, we need to be within 20% of what we applied for, kilowatts. If we do reduce the overall footprint, that means we get kicked to NEM 3.0. Now that's not necessarily a terrible thing. It's just we don't see the amount of savings that we initially projected.
Well, I realize that. I mean, if we don't do it at all, we're not going to see the savings. So I'm just saying, if we limit the scope, just because this is a very going to be a very volatile decision no matter what we do, I think that we might be better off just going with the ground mounts and the one over the one parking lot area type thing. So
I do think, so in the surveys that we did, the senior lawn was always in, right?
Always
so it was, do you want it in front of the school or behind the CTE, but not, should the senior lawn be part of it? And I mean, I realize these things take time, but I feel like it would be helpful to find out from staff and students, how much does this impact you? Maybe I'm totally wrong, and maybe they're going to be like, no, our young people see the value of solar, and maybe they're just going to be like, absolutely not, the environment's so much more important, like, we'll give up the senior lawn, and I will totally accept that. But I feel like having that conversation and asking that is an important step if we can do it. Because then if they say, absolutely, the senior lawn is critical to our culture at the school, well, then maybe it's worth the cost savings.
Yeah, and I'll jump in there. Just a couple of things. One is when we think about some of the bond projects where we were really explicit from the very beginning and the board gave us clear direction, I'm thinking about the playgrounds where we went to great lengths to ensure student voice in that element. One of the things that in the last meeting that I was intentionally did was say, before we go out and survey the staff, I wanted to make sure that the board felt comfortable operationalizing the feedback that we got, because otherwise, if what we need would need a uniform, like if there is a new expectation for all solar that we get student feedback, then we should do that uniformly. Because that hasn't been an expectation, it hasn't been built into to our feedback. I think that it'd be just like we were for the playgrounds. That was really clear that we do that for other elements too, because we want to be consistent about that. Given that the staff was really clear about that, and the last thing that I'll offer here is building on. We had an ideal array set up, and we can't do that for seismic reasons. So what we're doing is selecting, less desirable options. One of the things that I would ask from the board is, if you're asking us to go through a new type of system, to have consensus today on which of these less desirable options are, again, the least worst. Then our staff can at least know that you have consensus on the least worst design while we consider other options. Because here's the other point. The rest of the options, and this was part of the discussion in why I'm interjecting here, this could take away from potential revenue from the district. And if that wasn't something that was ever on our option. We didn't know that part of your direction was to potentially reduce potential revenue over multiple years. And the revenue source that we projected is a revenue that goes over at least 20 years. So that's the other part of this, is that we've never been prepared to have a discussion with the board about those kinds of long-term projections. I know that we would appreciate the opportunity to have that discussion before we make a decision about this one site. Also, in terms of the way that the expectation that we have for engagement, I would like some more direction on that too. But the other part would be, and this would be my request, that we get consensus today on those designs that are the least worst, and then allow staff to come back and say, okay, we have this deadline and we can get all these other options and projections within this deadline. That would be really helpful to us. So I'll leave it at that.
And yeah, I think we didn't give enough feedback for you, and I do apologize for that about the survey. I think coming from this, we looked at all these are, district or staff areas, but then come to find out that this is a really, a used lawn for our seniors. That's when it kind of triggered we should get student input just for that area, because that's what they use. If we use a parking lot for a staff parking lot, that's more of a staff thing. So I do apologize for that. And, there was one other point I totally forgot.
Hold on before we go, because we made a decision about, and my concern is kind of what Dr. Castro was saying. We made a decision about solar because we thought it was important. It was a future revenue, and we thought it was good for the future. Then we said, let's slow down. Let's ask the staff what they think. We got the answer. And
actually,
now
you asked them to ask staff and students.
Yeah. Okay. So here's my question. So if we go back and we ask the students, and the students said yes, is that it? Because if we're gonna do surveys and go in a direction, and we get 50%, so we say we didn't talk to the students. Another question was, talk to students that had been there. I have, and it wasn't the students that I talked to. It wasn't an important thing. it was an in-passing thing. It wasn't like every year we know as seniors we're going to do this on this day, on this on. It's not. I can tell you that for sure. It's not that important, right? And I think maybe a couple people might think it's that important, but do those couple of people outweigh the benefit of what we're going to get 15, 20 years from now from doing solar? And I don't want to get into the practice of saying, let's get the input from people, and then when they get the input, then we second guess the input when we said we need solar. We want to get the input we got from staff, we hasn't got it from students, and if that's what we want to do, then we should do that. But if the students come back and say, yeah, that's fine, we think it's important, we're going to have another conversation if 4 or 5 people say, but I don't agree with it. Like I think when we ask for the information, we get the information, we should act on the information. And it sounds like that's not what we're doing.
But did we get all the information? We're asking staff to get more information from the stakeholder that wasn't addressed.
And I'll interject there. So that's actually why, just coming back to my ask for tonight, to get, again, a consensus of the least worst, because the other, what I hear you saying is a slippery slope, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't do it, but in the same way that one of the critiques is that we gave the staff the option knowing that we had a certain square footage that we had to cover. And this was the least worst version of that. What I wouldn't then want to do is to go out to students of all levels. Let's say we survey 4th and 5th grade, because our elementary schools and their playgrounds and our operations are significantly impacted by the implementation of solar. What I wouldn't want to do is to go and repeat the same thing, knowing that we have to have a certain array. We know where those arrays have to be because of all the reasons previously specified, when underneath that, the board would actually consider an option where we don't end up generating the savings that we had originally intended. Because then what that survey would really look like is, do you want solar? And that's ultimately where I want to make sure that's that slippery slope. Because if the option is no, we don't like it, and no, we don't want it anywhere, then the board, in the same way that I asked for the I don't want to say guarantee, but certainly some assurances that when you ask the staff that we would coalesce around what the staff had shared. Again, I would be asking the board for clear direction that if the option is to really pull back from the original estimates that we said from over, whether it's 5, 10, 15, 20 years, that is an option that the board will consider less revenue. We need to know that now, because then the projections, we need to reconfigure so much, and by then, this is the other thing that we need to be aware of, is we may run out of time to fully implement by the timelines that we have. And that's the other piece that I ask from staff, is I want to make sure that the board knows very clearly that in the engagement process, should we not be able to make it in the time, that the entire project could not be viable. And so there's a lot of things at play. And that's why, again, I'm asking for, if we can have consensus around the least worst, then we can go back, do our homework, come forward and say, okay, based on our timeline, we could then have an agenda item on this, like, okay, you would be fine with having half the revenue over a 20-year period. Here's what those options could look like, or something like that. Because again, if we involve students, and students often, regardless of the survey and regardless of the thing that you are asking, sometimes their belief systems are very different than adults. And so if we were to say to them, hey, did you know that your playground is going to be interrupted for 2 months? If we put the solar here and this is where we have to put it, do you want your playground to be interrupted for 2 months? And their answer is no, I don't like that. Then we want to know, is that an option for us to potentially not move forward? Because we would need to know that. Yeah, thank you.
I was just going to say, I think one of the reasons that this feels different is that we approved all of those locations, right? And this is a big departure from the approved location. I understand the reasons why, but this is not the same as saying, at Elmhurst, we're moving it 10 feet to the west because of shade, right? Like this is a really significant departure in the location and the way that it impacts the campus. I don't think any of our students would have felt weird about us putting it over their parking, right? They would have been like, great, it's over my parking now, my car is going to be cooler when I get there, this is fantastic. But this will potentially really change the look and feel of the school again, maybe I'm totally wrong. Calvin surveyed some kids and felt like it isn't going to make a difference. And if that's what we find out, then I'm totally fine with that.
And how long is the project going to take? Let's say if we went through with it, how long would it take to?
From design to construction?
Yes.
9 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have to start from the beginning, essentially, on any
And what's our
design choice
timeline to
we
get
make.
this completed with the target that we
March
have?
of 2026 is our deadline
March 2026.
for an
okay.
M2.0 interconnection, yeah.
Okay.
If I could add to it though, the timeline does not include lead time for electrical equipment, which is really substantial right now. So in an ideal world, we would start design tomorrow and be able to go straight into building once we have DSA permitting and then be done in 9 months. But the reality of that is at some point in there, we could have a pause of up to a year
Yeah,
to
I
wait
guess
for the necessary
my
equipment.
point was, who are we surveying, right? We're going to ask the students. Are we saying we're asking the seniors that are not going to be there when it gets there? Are we asking the freshmen who are going to be seniors when it's done? Like, if we're going to ask people, and if we do ask and the students say no, if the students say no, we do not want it, are we going to eliminate solar? Or are we going to ask them, see what they want to say, and then make a decision anyway? So we're going to start engaging the community a lot more. That's a board directive. We're going to do that. But we need to make sure that when we do it the right way. And if we don't get the answer that we think we're going to get, then what are we going to do? Are we really going to say, we're going to ask them, do you want it or not? And they say, no, we don't want it, and we're going to scrap solar? So, I think it's really important when we go from here how we react to this survey. And if we don't get the answer that we think we're going to get, or we get the answer we think we're going to get, what are we going to do? And then do our surveys mean anything after that?
Yeah, we have to include students in these decision-making processes. You could put as much value on their information as possible, but the fact of the matter is, we're changing the landscape of their school that they wear jackets. Ventura, they play football, they put in their, that's their school, that's their habitat, right? And we want feedback from them. You could put as much weight on that as possible, or whatever you want, but we need to have that input still. Is their input less than a staff member who never goes on that lawn? Is their input less than a parent who drops off their kid at that school and never sees that side of school? It's the kids that use it we have to engage. I understand they're from 14 to 18-year-olds, right? You're going to get a wide range, but it's still an important part of this whole process. And we're going to take it in its totality, not just wait on their decision. This is your decision. We're going to act on it. We're going to look at the totality of this whole thing. Because if you look at and also the false dilemma, let's give that option of number 3 where we don't do it, or we just need more information. And it's our fault because we should have asked for that.
And I appreciate the dialogue. Part of, again, where I'll continue to reiterate my request, because then the next feedback that we will come to is then what is the threshold for student engagement? Survey results generally hover around 30 to 33% return rate. We will want to know, is there a specific, going back to Calvin's comment about grade level, like if there's a disproportionate number of seniors and 11th graders who respond and not 9th and 10th graders, and 11th and 12th graders won't be the ones affected by this decision. There are lots of things in terms of the survey, and then also is it online? Are we doing it in classes? Are we using up instructional time? Those are things that have a lot of ramifications for us if we're going to do it right and well. And then not the final part, but a big part that I brought up earlier that I want to come back to is, regardless of the survey methodology, regardless of the thresholds for decision making for the board, part of that is an underlying policy issue, which is it the board's intention to reduce revenue if the students, and what percents of students say, we just don't want it? And that's the assurance that we would want, and the community would want, and staff would want. If that is truly on the table, then the options that the students get, it becomes a more complex kind of survey. And I don't think that if we were going to give again, I agree with you. We obviously love our students' feedback. But if, let's say 200 students respond and there are varying degrees and 20% of them will be there by the time this is implemented, and the students are making a long-term decision that impacts our ability to provide other, to address other board priorities, that we've impacted that. And I don't know to what degree that would happen, but it would happen to some degree. I would want to make sure that we as staff encapsulate that, and so that way the board can make an informed decision, because if that's the power that we're putting in the students' hands, then we better do it right and when we should do it well.
I think I'll put in my 20%. I don't really think that we should give the students the option as to whether or not we do solar. It seems like too big of a decision to put in the hands of like a 14-year-old. But I do think that we should make that decision as a board. We are going to do solar, and then give them these are the designs, this is where it could possibly be, and then get their feedback that way. That way they're still involved in the process. But we're not, it shouldn't be up to them. I'm sorry. It should be up to the board.
I don't think that what we're saying, we just wanted that input.
Yeah. That is what we're saying.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we need that input. If I said, we're going to take away your staff lounge, and I asked the principals and AP and not the teachers, do you think that's right? They're the teachers that use the staff lounge, but we're going to just make the decision based off of what the decision holders make, the admin. We need to engage, if one of our board priorities is to foster our culture and our climate, that's number 3, we need to do that with our students involved. I understand, I'm a teacher. I know about student engagement. I know what happens, but we still have to do it, especially if we approved something and the earth said, no, there's a tectonic plate there. So, or a fissure or whatever that is. Now we're changing it, and so we're using a student space, right? That they frequently use for dances. It sounds like, for transit, for senior activities. I think we need more information about that particular spot, because everything has kind of changed since what we initially approved. So I'm asking for more information. If the board doesn't want more information or involvement of the students, that's the board's decision. But I'm asking for a little bit more, because we're going to make decisions for these students very long term, and having their input gives us some kind of understanding of how that's going to affect the students, right?
Well, this is why we have 5 people. So this is the only thing that I'm saying is, if we ask the students and the students say no, are we going to scrap solar? Right?
I'm repeating, no. We're not going to do that. We're going to look at it as totality.
Okay,
that's what we do with every other step.
Let me finish. So they say no, and we do it anyway. How's that going to make you feel? What did you ask me for? I've said that before, right? You've heard me say that. If you're going to ask me and I say no and you do it anyway, why do you ask me? It makes no sense, because we don't know what the survey is. We don't know what they're going to say. We have no idea. But we're going to have to act on it in some way. So if they say no, we don't want it there, are we going to scrap solar? If we're giving them the option to make a decision and they say no, are we really going to scrap this whole project?
No, that's not what we're saying.
I think to Calvin's point, what I think we need to determine is, if they say no, then our option is less solar at that site, which then gets to Dr. Castro's point: is the board willing to lose the revenue? Sure. So I think that's the discussion we need to have to start with. Are we willing to lose the revenue if we go with asking the students their voice and they give us something that we're not expecting?
Yeah, one or two things are going. Go ahead.
Sorry, I've been waiting. So I think there's a difference between saying we're asking students, if they say no, then are we scrapping it? We're allowing them to be a part of the process, right? Just like if staff had said, we don't like any of these options, wouldn't have necessarily meant that we didn't do it. It would have meant that we would have had a conversation about the feedback, right? So right now we have a portion of the population who's had an opportunity to give feedback. Now we're asking for a different set of the population to be able to give their feedback. All of those things will be taken together, also with our own feedback, right, as decision makers, and we'll make a decision. I don't think, if students came back and said, no senior lawn, absolutely not, then we have the conversation about, are we willing to give up the revenue that would entail? Are there other options? Or, you know, what do we do? But we are missing a key voice in this conversation. It's not the only voice. It doesn't supersede staff voice. It doesn't supersede our voices, but it's a part of the conversation that's currently missing.
They bring value. That's what we're trying to say. Students bring value and substance to this conversation. We're not going to base it off of 50 students' responses. That's not what we're, at least I'm trying to ask, is that I just want more information from the stakeholders who have access to it. That's it. If they say no, we're having that conversation. We could probably do it anyways.
That's what I'm saying.
So why don't we just let Dr. Castro run the district and we just kind of hang back?
You're going off a cliff on that part. When you say have a conversation about something, when I have a conversation about something, that means that what I say is going to alter the input.
No,
that's what you're saying.
No, that's not what I'm saying at all.
You want the information from the students.
Yes.
Right?
Because I want to know what they use it for.
When you get that information, right? And I'm just saying, are we going to act on their information, or are we still going to do it? If they say we don't want it, are we scrapping solar? And I think that putting that information on students who are only half of them are going to be there when it happens.
Okay.
We know that. We know that for a fact.
We are not doing that. We're getting their information, so they're part of the process.
Let me again.
Wait, before you go.
Yeah, go ahead.
We're having a discussion, and it seems like we're getting angry about it. I'm just saying that I want to make sure this is not the only decision we're going to be getting input from, right? We did this the wrong way. We can agree that all this should have been done before we said we're going to put these things here. We should have already asked the information. We're going backwards. But what I'm saying is the information that we're going to get, are we getting it to really have information? Or are we getting it to say, if they say yes, we're like, man, we made it. But if they say no, and we still do it anyway, it sets the wrong, it's why have the conversation, and people are going to feel, because this is the way I feel every time, if I wasn't going to be able to offer my input and something happens, why did you ask me? So it's 5 of us, and this is all we're saying, but we have to make a decision between the 5 of us on what we're going to do, right?
Sure.
And so I do not think that we should ask the students, when 50% of them are not going to be there when we install it, if we should put solar when we know solar is important for the revenue in this school 20 years from now. For my 20%, I do not think I want to put that decision in the hand of a student who is not going to be there. It's our decision. We were elected to make fiscal responsibility decisions, and I don't think we should put that in the hand. So I guess we just need to decide.
I agree with that. We should get their input on if they use the field, if they value that space. Not if we should put solar there or not. That's not my discussion. That's not my. We should just get input from them if they use it. I want to know if they use it.
Well, and I would say we'd probably need more discussion with rather than just if they use it, but could they use it with the new configuration on it?
That's a good point.
I mean, how much is this configuration going to inhibit the use of it? I mean, because if you just say, well, we're going to base our decision off, do they use it? That's one thing. But can they use it with the configuration that we're talking about? And that's a different story, in my mind. But if we're just going to base it off whether they use it or not, we probably would say no. I think the question, to me anyway, comes back down to, if for some reason they were to say, give us all the reasons in the world why we shouldn't be doing it there, then it comes back to that discussion, are we willing to limit the revenue? And I think that's what Dr. Castro's trying to get at, a design plan where he can start looking at possibly a limited revenue source versus, you know, if we should go that way. And so he can give us the figures of what we're going to lose to do that.
Yeah, and I want to go back, because Alicia, you kind of started us off on this, thank you. Was there anything else that you wanted to add before I go for, okay, all right. So first of all, we don't need to make this decision tonight, right? And that's where I'm trying to get at, is that if there's additional information you want, we do that. That's our job. That said, what I appreciate about what you shared earlier is we didn't get that direction, that this was something that was important for this project, but we can do that. My reticence is in the very same way that when I was asking for direction from the board about the staff, I'm now doing it for the students. I want to be able to come back and have a conversation about the instrument that you're asking us to use, the methodology, the thresholds for response rates, the types of questions, the interactive. Like years ago, we did LCAP surveying a little bit different. We then paid for a firm to do that. It really helped with our results. I want to make sure that it's not the intention for us to use up instructional time for this. I want to get a lot of information about which students should be engaged, under what conditions, and what that response needs to look like for a threshold, regardless of whether the board is saying this is going to change their opinion. Because what I wouldn't want to do after putting in the effort in engaging students in this manner is for then that to not be reflective of what you were actually trying to get at. And going into survey design, before you even ask people a bunch of questions, we have to think about what are the outcomes of that survey, because you craft the survey around the outcomes that you want. And that's really what I want to get to, because going back to what Dr. Dannenberg just shared, if there's even an outlying possibility that we would, as a board, reduce the revenue that the district could generate, that needs to be a part of it. The students need to understand that if you choose design 1 or design 2 or 3, this would basically be a recommendation to the board that we reduce revenue over a 20-year period. And I believe if we're going to engage our students, they are sophisticated enough to understand that. They are generally very engaged in issues related to the environment. I trust our students to do this level of work, but I wouldn't want to do it halfway. If we're going to do it, then we should do it to the highest degree possible, to be reflective of, Calvin, what you were saying about honoring their input, but then also, more importantly, as a board, that you have that threshold of information to make a decision one way or the other, whether it's something that we end up impacting long-term revenues or not. So all of that said, I do want to go back, because I feel like we have consensus. There's 3 of you that feel strongly that we can move forward with the design. So it feels like that. We have 2 that want more input. Is there anyone who feels differently about the student input? Because that's that consensus. If there's consensus around going back and getting more student input, that's separate from staff and me specifically wanting to hear about the design.
Well, yeah. I think maybe we need to ask specifically on the design. I think the design 2 with the flat panels up above Poli and the senior lawn and out by the softball field. Are we in agreement that's the one to go with for a discussion purpose of all the designs? The second part comes the student input. And I would like student input too, but I don't want student input yes or no. I want student input, can they work around the structure that we're putting in there? That would be the issue for me, is, if you just say yes or no because the structure's there, that's a different question than can they live with what's there, and quite frankly, it's going to provide them some shade and stuff, so it might be more beneficial to them.
And that's why, if we are going to engage the students, this is why I would want to spend time eliciting from the board what your priorities are related to the student feedback, because it can't just be we go back, create a survey that isn't reflective of what you're trying to elicit from students, and we miss in some way, in some critical way, something that you were trying to get from them. And I believe our students can respond to very sophisticated things, but we have to structure it well, and it needs to be developmentally appropriate. And the methodology needs to be probably based on their cell phones, because that's another issue, right?
Right.
Like we are, in some ways, limiting their use of cell phones. So there's a lot of things that I want to make sure we get right, if there's consensus to do that, because the other parties are asking staff to spend a lot of time on this, and we will do it, and we want to do it well.
And I got very passionate, and I just want to say that
no, I was just getting ready to say, we've had this conversation already, so don't think that we're upset with each other. We always know, that we are. That's why we're here, right? We argue our point and we move on.
I love this man, but the thing is, we could get in these little tips, and then we could go out and get coffee later. It's like nothing ever happened. Yeah. And so I appreciate you. I appreciate you.
So I guess with regard to the question that we would like to ask students, I mean, I think we're settled that behind the CTE buildings makes sense. It seems like it's something that staff supports. There's the parking lot, which adds the car charging station. That's a win for the campus, right? So I guess for me, the question I would ask students is, you know, the board wants to go solar. Here are the reasons, right? Like we know it's going to generate savings for us. We believe it's the right thing environmentally. But if we put this in the senior lawn, it will have an impact on your activities. Do you think it's worth it, right? Like, do you think as students that the potential impact to that area is worth it for what it will generate, that area specifically would generate for us in terms of savings over a 20-year period?
Yeah, understood. And again, I want to get some consensus that what I heard and saw was that there's consensus in the least of the worst is design 2. So that's what we're talking about. Okay. Now going forward, is there consensus that you are directing staff to go out and do this student survey? Because if so, we would need to come back, agendize it, and we would want to do that. Right now, that's the next piece that I'm asking for consensus for. Is there consensus to direct staff to do the things that I've asked us to do so we do this right and well? I hear that there are 2 people yes and 2 people kind of.
And I'm one. I would like to see the student data. So, but with that, again, I think you need to bring the survey back to us so we can look at it, so that we don't. It doesn't go out to the students and we say this isn't what we want.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's my concern. Yes.
I think we ought to have a shot at it ourselves to see if we understand it and see if we think, you know.
Yep.
But I'm with you. I put a lot of faith in our students. They're very sophisticated and will be able to understand this.
I just want to ask the board if they would prefer for students the alternate, instead of doing surveys, doing focus groups. Would that be more effective, or would it be?
Well, Dr. Mirza, that's exactly why we need to come back, because the level of the board commitment to it could have an impact on instructional time. It also could have an impact on our policy, or is it related to cell phone use? There are so many things, and I want to make sure the board understands one type of survey or engagement has pros and cons. And that's why we need to focus on what the board is trying to elicit from that feedback. That's why we need to go back and talk about it.
Can I don't know what you guys think of this, but we have a really sound student journalism program at Ventura High School. One option would be to invite them to write something about this and solicit input, right? Because then the people who care about it, like maybe there's no one, right? Maybe there are 5 people on the campus who care about it. Then they would hear about it and they would reach out to us, and then maybe we don't have to do like a big survey, but just kind of giving them there's an echo and I don't know where that's at, but they're giving them an opportunity to at least know about this, because right now I don't feel like our students even know this is something that's being considered, right? So they don't follow our meetings, it wasn't discussed with them. So I just feel like if we give them the opportunity to weigh in some capacity, doesn't have to be a formal survey, I just feel like that's meaningful engagement. If there's a better way than a survey, you don't have to do a survey on my account.
Did we? we have student speakers on this? Okay.
Yeah, we have 3 public speakers. I'm not sure if Christy Weir is still out here.
Christy Weir just left, well, because of the process.
Okay, thank you. So up next would be Cherie Eckberg. So she has 3 minutes for this item, and then Cherie will be followed by Spencer.
This goes to the board. The process, so deliberation is before public comment? Okay. And so the city, it's different, right? Okay. Hold on. Let me pull up my notes. Does everyone have the piece of paper?
Oh, you want them? Sorry.
Yes, please. Thank you. For the board members and I was going to suggest replanting the lawn, because if the lawn was replanted, people would sit on it, right? Just like at any park. Okay, I will get started. Anyway, so thank you very much, trustees and Superintendent Castro. I just want to say I wanted to comment on this because I am an environmental designer, and I know how space helps us to connect or disconnect, depending on how we design it. I was the past PTSA president of Ventura High School, and I spearheaded the beautification committee. We got 60 plants planted, 3 trees, did a library identification sign. So my heart is real, and I know every inch of that campus. So anyway, so moving forward to today, I am concerned about the location of the solar panels on this prime area, the senior lawn. It's the heart of the school. It's the one area that's kind of nurturing. It's got buildings around it, has green lawn, it has trees. Yes, it needs work. Yes, it needs more planting on it. But I have seen school dances there, clubs meet there, cheerleading. It is used, and if it's being used more of a transient space, it's because it's not maintained. If you create it beautiful, they will come. We need this. We need a nurturing spot in the middle of campus for the gathering place for the kids, especially now that lunch is a half hour and kids don't have time to leave anymore. So it gives some respite. I was also going to say, so you talked about surveying the students, and I do think that's a good idea with the LCAP goal of engaging families in partnerships. There's actually a sharing power component, and it's valuing the community and the families and the students' voices to give input, not make the decision. I also think that, it's funny, I showed my plans, I sent the PowerPoint to several community members, and a lot of community members don't know how to read plans or read bird's eye views. So if you ask them, they don't really know how to answer. Now maybe your whole school staff is really educated in reading floor plans and bird's eye views, but what you really, I would suggest, is a computer rendering of the location on the senior lawn so it can be visualized to scale. And with any design project, a detail. Like I looked at the ones at Ventura College, and there's pipes, and they're really industrial, and they're harsh. There is beautiful solar designs. It is more costly. But again, we shape our environment, then our environment shapes us. So how do we want to affect the students? So show 3D picture, and then analyze. Ask the students to analyze the purpose of the senior lawn and what it could be. Ask the students that we're not sure, what could it be? What would you like it to be? You know what? These kids are smart. They will have creative ideas. And let's think outside the box and use our creativity. And lastly, the key is being resourceful. And I think that we could raise so much money from the community for a project to make the senior lawn come to life again with community partnerships. We can do it. Thank you so much, and thank you for all the care you have.
Okay, next up we have Spencer Noren, and he'll have 2 minutes on this topic.
I might do 1:30 because I have about 30 seconds left, maybe. Thank you, Cherie, for doing that and your contributions as PTA president. That's awesome. I really appreciate staff looking at me as I speak as well. Public comment. Thank you so much. Board president, superintendent, staff. Board member Levere, thank you. Very good understanding of it, right? Let's make a decision here. Give the kids a voice. I appreciated that. I hadn't heard about the quad. We called it at Buena. I'm not sure if they call it the lawn at Ventura, but I'm a Bulldog, and the quad's crazy important for us. It's about space. It's about feeling open in the quad. You can see your friends from away. You can look at them. Birds fly over. You can see the hillsides. And I really appreciate the passion and the discourse a little bit that went there, because that's what we need to see. It's okay to see our public representatives have a little something going on, because you know it means a lot to us. So thank you. If I had any type of voice in this, I'd say let the students have their voice. And trust the juniors and seniors, even though they might not be here, they've been on campus the most recently, so they understand the campus the best, and also can look after their sophomores and freshmen coming after them. So I think they have a big understanding of what's happening on campus. And just say, really, more importantly, it's called the lawn, and if we put solar over it, the lawn will probably be gone, and then you won't kind of have that aspect of having green space and tackling and doing different fun events. So with that thing, I want to really support the solar on campuses to save money. But little reminder, that was only brought to us by the bond and the voters, bringing that $500 million into that new market space of money we have. So it wouldn't be like losing money if we knocked solar down. It just wouldn't be creating as much money as we thought from the bond measure in that aspect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, are we done with this issue?
I don't know. I heard that there was a hug required.
A hug required? Yeah. I think it's a break required right now.
Yeah, okay.
We'll take a 10-minute break. Thank you. Welcome back, and we'll continue with our Board of Education meeting. We'll start with action item, educational services, request for consideration of Prop 28. Wait a minute, I'm on the wrong spot. Am I? Oh, I am. Okay. Okay. Request for consideration Prop 28 site plans, first read. Dr. Bayless or Dr. Castro?
Thank you very much, Dr. Dannenberg. Board, this is, as you know, an ongoing conversation with the board about how we can implement our Proposition 28 monies, and we have revised Proposition 28. I think this is maybe the fourth revision that we've gone through in an effort to implement some of the board's feedback, and also to implement the feedback and the process as reflected in the Arts Master Plan. And the Arts Master Plan is agendized later for discussion, but I just want to note again the change made in the templates that you have in the attachments from the old Arts Master Plan to the new sort of preliminary Arts Master Plan that aligns to the structure, so that there's an alignment tool that principals have demonstrated. Not only have they used feedback from their surveys, their local surveys of the community, of students, parents, teachers, about what their school community wants, but also they're aligning their goals and plans to the new preliminary Arts Master Plan. So pleased to bring these before you. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions by the board?
I really appreciated the new format. I think the information is really helpful. And I mean, I had some specific questions about individual plans, which I shared with Dr. Castro, but overall, I thought it was really good.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I really appreciate it. I know the principals, site men, they've just been chomping at the bit to get this going. So I appreciate you. I appreciate your team. I appreciate them. I know it's a long process. We just wanted to do it right, and it's in other schools or other districts are already using those funds. So I just want to say that we're understanding of why there might be some upsetness about this, but I just want to express that we appreciate you. So thank you.
And I'd like to thank you as well. We put you through the ringer on this one, trying to get it so we think it's right, and we think we're pretty good there. So any other comments? Hearing none, this is a first read. We can't approve it tonight, though. Does anybody like to make a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Vote as follows. Trustee Rodriguez?
Yes.
Trustee Levier?
Yes.
Trustee Forsythe?
Yes.
Trustee Peterson?
Yes.
And Trustee Dannenberg?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 5-0.
Yeah, finally. Thank all the staff who work so hard on that.
Victory is sweeter
we
when
really
it's
appreciate
hard-earned,
it.
right?
Okay. B, action, human resources certificated, approve of provisional interim permits, PIP, and waivers, first read. Ms. Wolowitz?
Good evening. This is routine in nature for some of our hard-to-fill positions, some candidates that we have considered for hire that just have a couple pieces remaining in their credentialing requirements.
Any questions by the board?
Yes, I have some questions. Not specific to any particular candidate, but I shared with Dr. Castro. I would really like in the future to have a little more information about where people are in. So in our meeting with the special education teachers this week, we heard about some people who had just begun their credentialing program versus people who are like, say, halfway through or close to finishing. So when we look at this, it would be helpful to know a little more information about where someone is in the process. Like, are they just getting started? I happen to know some people on this list, so I know where they are in this process, but it would be really helpful to have a little bit more information moving forward.
Yeah, and before Ms. Wolowitz responds, what we'll do is just confer with legal in terms of like the credentialing process and the personnel, and then anything that we can, even if it's anonymous, but like numbers and people can be assured of confidentiality, even if it's like a semi-annual or annual, that would be really helpful for us to be able to do that. So we will absolutely do that.
Yeah, and the reason is, again, we're approving someone to be working in a position that they're not yet credentialed to work in. So it's good to know, are they 2 units away? Are they 10 units away? Are they just getting started, right?
Any other questions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to.
Second.
Thank you. Vote as follows. Trustee Rodriguez?
Yes.
Trustee Levier?
Yes.
Trustee Forsythe?
Yes.
Trustee Peterson?
Yes.
And Trustee Dannenberg?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 5-0.
C, Action Business Services, request for approval of contracts exceeding $25,000. There is a list in front of you. Are there any comments? Dr. Mercer or Dr. Castro?
None for me. Thank you.
Any questions by members of the board? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Well, second?
Thank you. Vote as follows. Trustee Rodriguez?
Yes.
Trustee Levier?
Yes.
Trustee Forsythe?
Yes.
Trustee Peterson?
Yes.
And Trustee Dannenberg?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 5-0.
Moving to our conference agenda, conference item A, Educational Services, consideration of the Arts Master Plan. Dr. Bayless.
Thank you, Dr. Dannenberg. If you recall, at our last board meeting, we made a presentation. Thank you to Director of Secondary Deidre Menares for making that presentation about the Arts Master Plan and the process that committee went through to revise, to update our longstanding Arts Master Plan so that it could be used to guide our future district decisions and to provide an opportunity for principals to align their Proposition 28s to the Arts Master Plan. So that presentation was made last week, and we agendized it once again for a full board discussion. And again, happy to answer any questions. And I'll just ask Deidre to stand by with answers, since she was a part of the process, more so than I was.
So are there any questions about the Arts Master Plan? Okay.
So, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a question, but more of a comment, which I shared with Dr. Castro last week. I think this is a really good beginning. What I feel is kind of missing, having gone through this process in the previous iteration on the original master plan in 2015 and then again in 2017 was really board buy-in, right? So sort of the original master plan came from a movement by the board to prioritize this and to really make sure that the arts were front and center in the way that we made decisions as a district, and they prioritized allocations of resources as a result of that. And it was kind of aspirational. I really think this is very operational, which is useful, but I hope that in the future we have an opportunity to have a conversation about what our values are as a board and how that will drive later evolution of this type of master plan, right? Because I think the only way this really becomes a part of who we are as a district and what we do when we're making decisions is if we agree that this is the way we're going to prioritize things. And so I'm fine with it as it is, and I think I appreciate the work that went into it. I appreciate the vision and the kind of operational aspect of it, but I would like to see more in the future.
Any other comments by the board? Okay, here.
And Dr. Dannenberg, before we move on, just wanted to get, since we don't need approval, there's no statutory requirement for approval, just wanted to get consensus that we can use this plan to build off of, engage our staff. We will bring it back at iteration, but also building on what Trustee Rodriguez said, we have our retreat coming up, and this could be like one of those things that we talk about, like what is the board's vision for the arts? We'd have to, of course, respect the confines of the conversation, but this is exactly where we would start that. So I just wanted to look around and see if there's consensus that we can move forward operationally. Okay, thank you.
I think you have the consensus. Okay, moving to the consent calendar. I understand we have a public comment on the consent calendar. He's already left? Okay.
Could we poll it? Have a discussion on it or no?
Well, do you know what it is?
Yeah, the mural.
Oh, you can pull anything you want for.
Okay, I'll go ahead and do that.
Okay. Do you know what number it is that you want to pull?
D3. I think it's just really quick.
Do you want to have a comment on it, or do you want to pull
Just
it?
a comment,
Okay.
I guess. Looking at the mural, it's a great mural. I think it's a wonderful design. It's going to be the front facing of the school. It would be kind of cool if maybe the logo was on the sale. I'm nitpicking art, and I shouldn't do that, but there's no Cabrillo Middle School there. So the idea, that's his signature, right? The kelp. And I really don't like taking artists' work and commenting on it and say, you should do this. But I guess my comment would be, it would be totally cool to have their logo there. When someone's driving up, they can see it. It's Cabrillo. That's all.
Was that what the gentleman was going to speak to, do you think?
I don't know. I think so.
Okay.
Yes, it was. He was going to
Okay.
speak to that one.
Thank you. Any other things any board members would like to have polled? If not, I'll entertain a motion to.
Sorry, I just want to clarify, that's on the side of the maintenance facilities that are there, right?
Like a church there. Yeah.
Up against the church, but it's not part of the church. Yeah, it's on the
Okay.
last one. Yeah.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve consent items 16A through 16E.
So moved.
Second?
Thank you. Vote as follows. Trustee Rodriguez?
Yes.
Trustee Levere?
Yes.
Trustee Forsythe?
Yes.
Trustee Peterson?
Yes.
And Trustee Dannenberg?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 5-0.
Board reports. Ad hoc committees, any board reports this evening?
Yeah, so I just wanted to share, Dr. Dannenberg, can you push your button? Sorry, thank you. Trustee Forsythe and I don't know why I was just blanking on your last name, had the opportunity to meet this week with some of our middle school special education teachers, and just wanted to, as the ad hoc committee for the special education report, wanted to share that it was really, I think, I'm grateful, and I know James is as well, for their sharing of their perspectives. And what I always share with people is that as a board member, I'm only going to know what you tell me, and so I don't necessarily, I don't spend a lot of time in a classroom as a board member, and so it's really great. I'm grateful for people taking the time to share their experiences with us. It always makes us make better decisions. And so we learned a lot about some of the changes with co-teaching that are going on in our middle schools. And again, I've shared that information with Dr. Castro, and, but I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Any other reports?
Yeah, I just want to, relay the same information that Sabrina did. It was important to hear from our teachers. Being a special ed teacher myself, I know exactly what they're going through, and hearing it from them was very powerful. And I don't know how much I could say on this. But the fact of the matter is, I appreciate you, teachers. This is what we need. We need to hear from you directly. That we wouldn't know if something is happening that's, that could be something that we can look into. Or if there's an issue that continues to arise, it would be helpful if we were to find out about it through you, and we could hear about it, and then we can start that conversation. So I appreciate that. I know it's hard to meet after school. You got to get home to the family, and they were all there. And they're very honest, and I appreciate that.
Okay, any other reports? Hearing none, we'll move on to coming events. Dr. Castro.
Thank you, Dr. Dannenberg. It's coming up on the screen. We start back to school nights tomorrow. Looking forward to being on campus. I know that you'll make as many of these as you can. Just for the community to know, we often have multiple back to school nights, either scheduled simultaneously or coming close upon the end of one, we start the other. So we try and make it to as many of these as we can, and we look forward to engaging our school communities. We have the holiday coming up, our first PAC meeting of the year on September 6th, and our AAPC meeting on September 11th. Thank you, Dr. Dannenberg.
Okay. Moving on to future agenda items, our board retreat's coming up this Thursday. We have a study session on the FCMAT report still to be determined. Still some discussion on the historical preservation of Washington School and joint use agreements to be determined. Okay.
It would be, I think we need to hopefully start scheduling those things like ASAP, please.
Agreed. Yeah,
it's been on the TBD for a little too long.
Absolutely, and now that we have the school year and we're back and everyone's back, we will be scheduling these.
And I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
And then the FCMAT subcommittee, special ed subcommittee. I don't know if I could bring this approaches at this time, but that'd be another important thing that we should get going.
We agree, and we're just about ready to get the subcommittee together.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Yeah, we as well. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to board superintendent comments. Any board member have any comments they want to make?
Sure. I was going to mention this during coming events, but we kind of slid by that. So I just wanted to share that I'm going to be hosting a listening tour at Grace Church on Saturday, September 7th at 11 a.m. Specifically, it's in response to community questions around Washington School classroom sizes and some of the issues that have come up in the last few weeks. All community members are welcome for obvious Brown Act reasons. Y'all are not. But again, that's Saturday, September 7th at 11 a.m.
I forgot a board report.
May I just ask a question regarding that, Sabrina? Is that related to your campaign, or is that a just you doing it to listen to the community?
Just listening to the community.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. Okay, James?
One board report I totally forgot. I went to the Westside Community Council and presented a kind of a PowerPoint on our design and for the annex for EP Foster. It was well received. I think they're looking forward to interacting more with our district, and hopefully probably use that space if it's available for their meetings. I know that was one of our intent was to have more community come into our facilities and participate in the whole process. So I think there's a lot of hope there, and they're very excited. And they're also excited with everything else that's going on with our district. So thank you for that information. I really appreciate it. That was really helpful.
Any other things from the board? Any other comments? Dr. Castro, do you have any comments?
No, sir. Thank you.
I assume we don't have any need to move into closed session?
No, we don't. Thank you.
Okay, prior to taking a motion for adjournment, we'd once again like to thank our VACE team for all of their help and making sure that we're out there in the public. Appreciate that very much. And with that, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Vote as follows. Trustee Rodriguez?
Yes.
Trustee Levere?
Yes.
Trustee Forsythe?
Yes.
Trustee Peterson?
Yes.
And Trustee Dannenberg?
Yes, and
Thank
we
you.
are
Motion
adjourned.
carries 5-0.